This is E&P Reports, a vodcast from Editor and Publisher Magazine, the authoritative voice of news media since 1884, serving newspapers, broadcast, digital, and all forms of news publishing.
And greetings once again, Mike Linder, publisher of E&P Magazine. As always, I bore you with housekeeping. If you are listening to us on the podcast platform of choice, whatever it is, please follow us. Watching on the YouTube channel, below me there's a subscribe button. To the right is a bell. If you smash those things, not simultaneously, one after the other, you'll get an update each and every time we upload another episode of this weekly vodcast series, E&P Reports. I've got an old friend, and the word old implies not just to the length of our relationship, but our ages as well. Rusty, I don't understand why. I think we're about the same age, but you look half my age. Rusty Coates, you are the Executive Director of Journalism Funding Partners. That's your current position. Mm-hmm. And I want to welcome you to the program. You and I got way back when you founded the LMC. I remember you at Media General. I lived in Tampa Bay when you were running TVO Online. Maury Research, remember those days?
Yes. My day parting surveys, yes.
But you became famous at Maury. You were one of the first to really do digital research when no one knew what the hell we were doing. We're talking early in this century.
It was so early. We still called it new media.
Yes, that's new media. And then Star Tribune. That's where you became. But you really know what? Very few know this. But you started at the Modesto Bee, and you spent 7 years there as a reporter. Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah. I started as a reporter doing investigative work, and you may hear my dog in the background. That's Ernie Pyle. He is unhappy with deliveries. I started as an investigative reporter and columnist, and then shifted to writing about technology because of everything that was happening with digital media back when it all came on a CD. And then convinced my publisher, Orange Quarles, who is also the chairman of our board at JFP, that we needed to go online. He asked me to put together a committee to look at it, and then I gave it to him, and he said, all right, I want you to do it. And I said, hang on, I'm a reporter. We don't really do anything. He said, well, that's too bad because you have the job, and I need you to get this online in 8 weeks, because he'd heard that the Sacramento Bee was going to be online in 10 weeks. And all publishers are competitive. So that's how I got my trial by fire into digital.
There you go. Some people that are half our age or even less are our guests today, with Rusty being kind of my co-host on this. I want to first welcome Adam Wagner. Adam, you're part of the Triangle. I think that's actually Winston. It's Raleigh, Durham, and what's the third? Chapel Hill, right? Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong. You are there, Adam, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
All right. And correct me if I'm wrong. I knew this for a fact. There are more PhDs per square foot in that triangle than any other spot on the planet. That is a fact, is it not, sir?
I'm not familiar with that one, but I'm sure that we will take it. So.
There you go. You are the environmental reporter at the Wilmington Star News.
No, the Raleigh News and Observer.
Okay, excuse me, at the Raleigh News and Observer. But you were but before that, Wilmington Star News, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then you were in another Wilmington. You were closer to my hometown of Philadelphia, Wilmington News Journal. Am I right, sir?
Briefly, yeah, that's Wilmington to Wilmington to Wilmington.
And then you still have ink in your veins because you were at the Post in Athens, Ohio prior to that. See, I'm stalking you, sir. So welcome to the program. And then I have a neighbor. She doesn't know I'm a neighbor. Angele Latham. You're at the Tennessean right here in Nashville. Am I correct?
Absolutely. I was in Jackson, Tennessee, and then I skipped over the river, and here I am in Nashville.
I live in Brentwood. Did you know that? Right near the WSM Tower. Just moved from there.
Excellent. Oh, I'm super. I'm actually, I live in Bellevue and I work in Nashville, so I'm super close to you. Nice.
I love it here. My wife and I moved here in December, and I'm telling everyone to get to the I-65 corridor. And I actually had the privilege, and it has nothing to do with this program, of going to see the Grand Ole Opry at the original Ryman Auditorium. I got there in December, and I was flipping out how excited I was. So we're not here to talk about Nashville. We're not here to talk about the Triangle and PhDs. Rusty turned me on to the organization that he is the executive director of, the Journalism Funding Partners. We're going to dissect that and why that organization implanted, if I can use that term, or put into these markets, these two incredible, young yet massively important and groundbreaking journalist. Guys, I'm blowing smoke, but it's a great story. So everyone hang in there. We'll get to that dialogue right after this message.
This episode of E&P Reports is exclusively sponsored by Blocks Digital, formerly Town News. Even though the name has changed, their commitment to the media industry is as strong as ever. Blocks Digital is now even better positioned to deliver integrated solutions like content management, audience development, advertising revenue, video management, and more. Join the over 2,000 news publishers worldwide that power their ongoing digital transformation with Blocks Digital, serving over 141 million monthly users who view over 6.5 billion pages of content each year. You can trust Blocks Digital to empower you, to connect you at scale with the community you need to reach. Blocks Digital, formerly Town News, now reimagined to help meet the news publishing challenges of tomorrow and beyond. Learn more at blocksdigital.com.
Okay, so we got three on the program here now. Rusty, Angel, and Adam. Angel, Adam, I want you to hum to yourself for a moment. Rusty, let's define real quickly elevator pitch JFP, the Journalism Funding Partners. You got a board of directors with a pedigree so long. This is an amazing group you report to, but you are the executive director. Am I correct?
I am. Thank you. And thank you for noting my board of directors. I like to say that I finally have a board of directors that reflects the demographics of the country we live in. And they are terrific. They all have pedigrees in media and media law and management. I mentioned Orange Quarles earlier. There's also Chris Turpin at NPR. He's on my board. Mizell Stewart, who was at Gannett until he decided to become a consultant. Sheila Solomon's my co-chair, on and on. But it's a great board. But you want the elevator pitch. Our mission is to increase the depth, diversity, and sustainability of local news by pairing with funders and building those relationships with funders who can fund directly into the newsroom. And Angel and Adam are great examples of that. Unlike some other organizations, we are not looking to help you build a better email strategy or an ad strategy. This is direct funding into a community good that is the newsroom. Because as we've had a campaign last year, if you care about education, you care about local news. If you care about clean air and clean water, you care about local news. And by you, I mean a funder. They may not say local news is part of their mission, but if local news isn't there to cover their mission, then no one knows what their mission is or whether they're accomplishing.
All right, so Adam Wagner, you cover climate change, right? That is your beat, and other environmental issues in North Carolina I'm going to say it right, the News and Observer, correct, sir? Part of the McElheny Media Network. How did that come about? Where were you, and how did you get the gig at this, at doing the obviously the work you love, but how did this all come about?
Sure. So when I left Wilmington, I came to Raleigh originally as a Report for America reporter covering hurricane recovery, and did that for a little while, and then this pandemic came along and blew everything up. So I ended up covering testing and vaccination and things like that for a while. And when that came to an end, the News and Observer was talking with Rusty and some other funders about an environmental job, and I had experience doing that and was interested in staying on board. And it just kind of came together very nicely. And that was about 2 years ago now.
And Rusty, because let's be honest, I'm a publisher. You've been in the chair too. It's expensive to create content. Your mission then was to come to the News and Observer and say, I can help you cover this very important issue of climate change. I got the guy, we're going to help pay the freight. Is that pretty much what happened?
I stay out of the hiring and the managing and anything having to do with the editorial integrity of the position. I create the means for the funds to be there and then get those funds to the newspaper. or the television station or the podcast, as our partners are, and leave the rest to them for hiring and management.
So
I also
they've
act as a firewall between the funders and the newsroom, so that there's no any influence or overreach or anything.
so Adam and the Raleigh News and Observer, they met them. I mean, you didn't pick Adam. Adam was picked by the Raleigh News and Observer, but he has to follow a beat that your funder wants him to follow, correct? And do you have some check and balances there? Do you make sure they don't say, well, look, Adam, we're having a rough weekend. Would you do obits this weekend? Get me some coffee and go cover the police beat. I mean, is there some system where you make sure that the mission of the funder is still taking place at the News and Observer?
Absolutely. That is the fence I ride on behalf of the funders, is to make sure that what is in the grant, because they are grants, and grants have terms, an outline of what the beat is, what the position is, the expectation of the amount of coverage, which is very loose. It's not a daily gong. And when we're going to have reports, generally quarterly, and I've had 8 of them this week between funders and news organizations about what they're doing and how they're making their marks, but no other interference in any of that. It's really to provide the newsroom with that resource and make sure that the funders' impacts are made and that the funder gets a warm happy out of all that.
Well, I mean, and it's nice to move the needle. I mean, it's okay to get someone embedded into a media company to have a mission, but when that mission does something incredible, that must make the funder really happy. In other words, I've always heard about big tech, heard about big tobacco. Excuse my ignorance. I never heard the term, these two words together, big poultry. I'm sorry, but I did not. I mean, I assume when we talk about, Adam, you did an amazing piece on big poultry, right? It got picked up. Everybody, what was this? Can you just give us a quick overview on how your nose found this story? Excuse the pun or whatever, the reference.
Sure. So I worked with 2 reporters at the Charlotte Observer, Gavin Off and Ames Alexander, on this pretty significant project that took up a lot of the second half of last year, called Big Poultry. And that story looked at the growth of the poultry industry in North Carolina. So North Carolina has a history of industrial agriculture. It's traditionally been hogs, but in the late 90s, there was a moratorium put on hogs. So what was on the ground is still on the ground, but it didn't grow. So the chicken industry and turkey industry kind of came in behind that and has been growing ever since, and growing essentially unchecked with very little oversight, very little control on where manure goes, very little attention being paid to the environmental impacts of that manure running into streams, sometimes having air quality impacts, things like that. So we looked at what other states are doing, what maybe other states are doing that goes a little further than what North Carolina is doing, and looked at how this industry kind of got this way and the communities that it's impacting.
So you took on Frank Perdue. I mean, let's be honest, and that's most probably someone who knows how to lobby heavily. I'm assuming. Again, I've never studied big poultry. I'm obviously very involved in lobbying our industry, having against big tech, trying to get legislation through. So is this the similar thing where this is like these are huge corporations that are, making sure that the right politicians locally are getting the right, whatever support. So these things just kind of slip through, and you're that final Madisonian check on power, even when it comes to chicken manure. I didn't say well, I'm not laughing. I know it's important. There are people who live near those facilities that are thankful to you, correct?
Sure. So in North Carolina, to be clear, it's not just Purdue. There's 10 big poultry companies that have
Tyson, I'm sure. I mean, these are, but go ahead.
They're here. Yeah. Butterball is headquartered in North Carolina. If you look at the graphic that we have on the project, you can see a lot of them up there. And a lot of the law changes around agriculture in North Carolina have been tied to the hog farm industry. So things like when neighbors can and can't complain, things they can sue over, limits on their lawsuit, damages, things like that. But they're all now applied to the poultry industry too. So the News and Observer in the mid 90s famously won a Pulitzer for a series called Boss Hog that was effectively what we did, but about the hog farm industry. And that drew a really strong tie between political influence and the hog farm industry. And we were able to look at the law changes around this industry, but not necessarily, we didn't draw as strong a link between political giving or representatives in the legislature or things like that. But there is no question that law changes in the last 10 years are significantly helping this industry out. And the other thing to keep in mind is that 79 of North Carolina's counties have a poultry farm in them or a processing plant. So they're everywhere, and they're jobs. And because this organization funded you, you became that check on power that may have just slipped through the cracks. Now, I'm going to swing to another region of the country, and I want to warn you, sir, it's a shame that you aren't working, I should say, in my area here in Tennessee, because, we're going to talk to Angel now, because Angel, correct me if I'm wrong, he could have been covering the Jack Daniels distillery issue. That's much more pleasant smelling, at least in my opinion, because they're dealing now with a whiskey fungus. Are you familiar with that story, Angel? I've been following that. They're the barrels of Jack Daniels that are stuck.
It's bizarre.
It is
Yes.
weird.
And yeah, I'm like, apparently we need a big beer or a big whiskey reporter, apparently. I mean, I'm sure that could easily be funded. I'm sure there's many reporters that would love to be on that beat.
But you are focused differently. You're not doing environmental stuff. You're doing First Amendment stuff, which in Tennessee, you and I know there's nothing going on.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. It's very quiet over here. Absolutely.
I mean, this is all sarcasm. If you're not following what's happening in the state, my new home state, it's fascinating. Just okay. At the time of this recording, our state has made, correct me if I'm wrong, but our state makes it illegal now for a drag show. Or I don't remember the legislation, but that's a First Amendment issue, correct? Are you covering that story?
Absolutely. Weirdly, I was actually one of the first reporters to cover the story when it all began back, I think it was last September, because this bill actually started in Jackson, Tennessee, and that's where I was before I became the First Amendment reporter for the Tennessean. And so I actually have been on this issue since the very, very beginning. And you're correct. It does ban drag in public anywhere a minor could see it. And it's a huge First Amendment issue because it's really kind of eating away at the edges of freedom of expression and assembly and speech. And I mean, it hits every single freedom in the First Amendment. And it's an incredibly large issue that the law is written so broadly. It's a dangerous precedent.
You're also covering another polarizing issue that kind of made you famous. I mean, you got picked up a lot on was it Sumner County, which is just outside of Nashville, correct?
Correct.
The Judeo-Christian. Could you explain that one? This is a county that basically passed a preamble to the amendment to the Constitution or whatever about upholding Judeo-Christian values in a school system. Is that correct?
Yes, it was a very strange story that I was not expecting to come across my desk. Yes, they passed a preamble to basically their county documents stating that their county commission would be upholding the values of a Judeo-Christian county. And it has no legal authority, I guess you could say. There's no secondary impact of this, of suddenly they're having Judeo-Christian themed events or something. But you're not supposed to put, and you're not allowed to put religiously favored statements in county documents. That's just, it's so blatantly a First Amendment overlap of church and state type thing going on there. And it was such a strange, story. I wasn't expecting it. And they had a lot of people were very supportive of it. I actually got quite a bit of pushback on that story because they were like, well, it's my county. I'm Judeo-Christian. I think this is fine. So it was a really interesting story to kind of explain to people, the First Amendment implications of that and why just because you like that religion does not mean that's a good precedent for you to be setting in your own county.
Before we go back to Adam, I want to ask you the same question I asked Adam. How did you get into this beat, First Amendment rights? Was that a passion of yours? I mean, obviously, Rusty here and his organization found the funding to make sure that my paper here of record in Nashville, the Tennessean, had you to do your job. But how is this your passion? I mean, are you a First Amendment lady all the way?
It actually always has been. I don't know if my bosses knew that or not, but I love legal reporting. I love law. I might go to law school sometime, but it's a lot of money, and I like journalism, so I'm going to be here for a good long time. But I've always really been passionate about the First Amendment and about law, and I really love getting into court cases and into activism's not the right word, because journalism is in itself neutrality, but I'm always really passionate about making sure people are heard, which is the basis of what we do, but it's also the basis of the First Amendment. And so I was really excited when this beat was presented to me, and I was asked if this was something I wanted to work on, because it really felt like the natural progression of what I've been working towards as a journalist. And it's really a great way for me to spread my wings and really put boots to ground on this issue.
And if I could, Mike, this is a unique, especially for your audience, how Angel got into this place is a unique journey in and of itself. It started with conversations between JFP and the Freedom Forum. The Freedom Forum was just coming off of a national study of people in every state of appreciation for and understanding of the First Amendment. And the two states that scored the lowest, they did not pass that class, were Hawaii and Tennessee.
Wow.
So we were talking about how we could raise awareness of the First Amendment. And, JFP's stock and trade is, if you care about clean air and clean water, you care about local news. You just call it something different. If you care about the First Amendment, you care about local news. So let's get a reporter who's going to write stories about nothing but the First Amendment. It's going to reach tens of thousands of people a day. And the Freedom Forum was all for it and has been blown away by the impact that Angel's work has had, to the point that, and this may be news for Angel, she's about to have a pier in Florida. The Freedom Forum is looking to fund another reporter in the state I live in, where there really is no First Amendment things going on here either.
He said sarcastically. I remember I lived there for 22 years before we moved here, and you better send 8 reporters down there. Okay, Adam, hang in there. I had a question for you, but we'll go back. But I'm going to stay with Rusty now. So we got environmental, and First Amendment. What else? What other issues are top of mind now when you go to a funder that they would like to make sure that the journalist entities in our society, whether it's digital, print, broadcast, or what have you, that we're focused on when we're all in this perfect storm of lack of funding for our newsrooms right now?
The hit parade, as far as what the funders are really interested in, coincide with all the beats and areas of focus for news organizations that never made the cash register jingle ever. And there are things like education,
right,
economic mobility,
right,
domestic violence,
right,
tech innovation, criminal justice. The investigative desk at the Miami Herald that won the Pulitzer Prize for the condo collapse,
right,
is partially funded through JFP.
Isn't it funny? You got to have the bleeds that lead stuff to get the clicks. But
Right.
that should also, those clicks should be funding the spotlight teams, if I can use that term from the Boston Globe, that do the real deep dives and investigative enterprise journalism that's so necessary.
That's right.
Next question. Both of these incredible kids, I'm sorry, I know you're not kids, but I'm 65, so I'm allowed to call anyone under 45 a kid. But both of you are making me feel real good about the future of our industry. But you put them both into legacy media brands, which makes my heart warm, because I know you follow this show, and you know how much I argue with people like Ken Doctor, as much as he's a very, very close friend. You know Ken really well too.
Absolutely.
He went off and started his digital buffet startup outside of the legacy brands. Like, they're not savable. I mean, we argue that constantly because I got a 140-year-old brand I'm running right now. You put them in the brands. You didn't do what a lot of funders are trying to do now, or a lot of people, they say, well, let's just ignore legacy media. I'm going to do a digital startup and go for funding. I'm going to do a digital site in a city just on environmental issues. Then I'm going to do a digital site in a city just for First Amendment issues. That to me doesn't make sense. If a brand, see, I'm arguing the other side now, but it's my show and I can do whatever the hell I want. If the brand has an audience, why not bolster it? Where is your organization on that? Is it a little bit of half and half, or do you first try to help the brand that's there?
We're agnostic about that, to be honest. If you want to start your own thing and there is a funder that wants to help you, we're happy to be your partner in that one. But where I stand on that one, and where I stand on it is, I really love what Chris Cruson does with Lion. In fact, Lion, local independent online news publishers. I've been working with them when I was a consultant. In fact, Lion exists because of work that my wife did with Lion, so they could incorporate and be an entity. They're a bunch of startups. They're all for profit. I love what Sue Cross does at INN with the independent nonprofit news sites. I love what American Journalism Project is doing to build new news organizations in metropolitan areas. But where I stand is that these news organizations that are maybe not as large as they used to be, and are certainly snidely talked about by some of these cool new kids, still have huge audiences and can have huge impact right now. If you build something and it comes out of the ground right now, you're looking at 3 to 5 years before you're going to have anywhere near the kind of audience impact that these legacy news organizations have right now. And so when I'm talking to, I'll single out the climate funders. If I'm talking to one of my climate funders, and if I were to go to them and say, we're going to build this thing, and in 3 to 5 years, it's going to have an audience, it's going to make a difference. And that funder will say to me bluntly, I'm interested in climate change news, and there is no 3 to 5 years from now if there's no coverage right now, because we want impact right now. And that's what through JFP we can guarantee. The funder says, we want to have an education reporter in Modesto in Stanislaus County. And I say, that's great. Let me put you together with the Modesto beat. And 6-8 weeks later, there are stories coming out from that beat that are reaching tens of thousands of people a day.
That are already there. You're not building it from the ground up.
No, and the audience is there. The person may not be, but the
audience is there.
Right.
And these two people are a testament to what you've done.
They absolutely are.
They've actually broken stories that have been picked up nationally. All right, so Rusty, you blew it. I mean, I know you wanted this forum to talk about your organization, but you brought in two amazing journalists. I could have done separate programs with each of them. Do you understand? And just about the topics and the beats they're covering and the great work they're doing. And here we are running out of a time, Rusty, and you want to talk to this audience I have, the 3,000 to 4,000 industry executives. Give me what you want JFP to do. What message would you like the journalism funding partners to say now as the executive director today in the climate we have to the news publishing industry today?
First, I would say that this could not have gone better from my perspective. I wasn't looking for a commercial for JFP, as everyone associated with me and JFP knows. JFP is not the hero of this story. People like Adam and Angele are the heroes of this story. We just enable them to do what they do. So I never want anyone thinking that we want the spotlight. What I would tell your listeners, though, is that philanthropy has a very large role in the future of local news. It's not just public radio. It's, if you think about the health of your community, if you, as an editor or a publisher, look at your community through the same lens as the director of a community foundation does, where you care if the children are getting fed and the elderly are not getting abused and kids are learning how to read and there's clean air and clean water. And your benchmarks every year are to make sure that there's improvements in every one of those areas. Local news is the vehicle to learn if there are improvements or decay in any of those areas. That's always been true. It's always going to be true. And more philanthropers are turning toward local news to help their impact that they care about. They don't care about local news or the survival of the newspaper or any of that stuff that we jaw on. What they care about is their mission and making sure that they are being effective. And when you tell a funder that you're going to have a climate reporter that is going to reach tens of thousands of people a day with his coverage or her coverage, immediately, not someday, and you're a climate funder who's been, stewarding funds to help, save ice decay at the Arctic Circle or save polar bears, you never know if you're being successful at that. You only know when you're being unsuccessful. Through this, they're able to see that they're successful.
Well, Rusty Coates, Executive Director, JFP, Journalism Funding Partners, amazing organization. If someone wants to learn more about JFP, the website address is?
jfp-local.org.
There you go. Someone wants to email you directly. You are who at that domain?
I am Rusty at jfp-local.org.
If you want to find out more about the amazing work that Angele Latham is doing at Music City's The Tennessean, I warn you, she does not spell Angel the way you think it is. Angel, correct me if I'm wrong, Angele Latham. That is your name, correct?
Correct, yes.
If you just Google that, you're going to see a lot of great stuff. Adam Wagner at the Raleigh News and Observer Publishing Company, just having a blast in some very interesting beats that is not only educational to me, but important for especially the economy of your area. I thank all three of you for your valuable time. Please keep us informed at ENP what you guys are up to, and thank you so much for the hard work you're doing.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.